Hi everyone, so we are back. In the last class, we had started the chapter, The Portrait of a Lady by Kushwant Singh. And in this story, as I told you, it's an autobiographical sketch in which the writer is talking about his own grandmother. And we understand that they had a very good relationship. They were good friends until the boy started going to the city school, and the grandma could not help him with his lessons anymore. And she was even more upset knowing that he was learning music in school. So that's where we stopped in the last class. In today's English class, we are going to do the remaining half of the chapter, The Portrait of a Lady by Kushwant Singh. We will start from the second paragraph on page 5. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. The boy is now a little grown up, and he's not sleeping in the same room with his grandmother. And here the writer says that she accepted the seclusion with resignation, which means that she accepted it without any objection. Seclusion here means being alone or away from others. So not having anyone to share the room with, she did not have any complaints. So she accepted it without any objection. That's what it means by accepted the seclusion with resignation. And then we also understand that she developed some habits. Earlier we saw that she was feeding the dogs in the village. She used to give them stale chapatis on the way to school. But now she has started feeding sparrows. The sparrows that come and sit in front of the house. And she would sit and feed them, and the sparrows would be sitting on her hands and on her head, and she was enjoying all that. In this paragraph, we also read that from sunrise to sunset, she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. So this is what the writer remembers, that she was always spinning at her wheel. She had this habit of spinning and also reciting the prayers, which we have read earlier also, that she used to pray continuously. Hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirrupings. Bedlam means confusion. So chirrupings is the sound of the birds. So here she was feeding the birds, and it was creating confusion there among the birds. It was a lot of noise and all that. So that's why it's called a bedlam of chirrupings. And this was the happiest hour of the day for her, and this is what she enjoyed the most. Again, in the next paragraph, we see that the boy is now going for higher studies, and he's going abroad, and he'll be back only after 5 years. So the boy is thinking that maybe when he comes back, the grandma may not be alive. And but the grandma is not at all moved. She seems to be very strong. She goes to see him off at the station. She goes to leave him at the railway station, and she's showing no emotion at all. And she even kissed him on the forehead, and he says that he thought that it would be the last sign of physical contact between us, because he is thinking, or he has a fear that when he comes back, grandma may not be there. But that was not so. That means when he came back after 5 years, I came back home and was met by her at the station. When he came back after 5 years, she was there at the station to receive him. She did not look a day older, and she still had no time for words. She wouldn't talk much. She held his hand or she clasped him, and even then she was reciting her prayers. So he again remembers that her habit of reciting the prayers was unstoppable. But even on that day, she went to feed the sparrows. She didn't take a break from that routine. In the last line of this paragraph, we read Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows, whom she fed longer, and with frivolous rebukes. That means she's enjoying that activity, and she talks to the sparrows also, and she's rebuking them. That means scolding them. Frivolous means very simple, silly expressions. So she's enjoying that activity, she's scolding the sparrows and feeding them. That is the picture we get here. In all the 3 paragraphs that we read now, the poet has mentioned that she is continuously reciting her prayers. That's a habit that she cannot give up. Okay? We see him telling that while she is spinning her wheel, also she is reciting prayers. And again, when she went to see him off at the station, she was reciting the prayers. Okay, her mind was lost in prayer. Again, in the 3rd paragraph, we see that while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayers. So she's continuously reciting her prayers. That's the picture that the writer is giving us. So she was a very devout and very pious lady, and from the way she's feeding the sparrows and the dogs on the street, we understand that she's very kind also. Earlier we saw that she was very upset when she came to know that the grandson was learning music in school. In the next paragraph, we get a very different picture of her. Okay, and this is the most interesting paragraph in this chapter. Here, the writer is describing what the grandmother did on the evening he returned from abroad. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum, and started to sing. So the grandmother, who did not approve of the music lessons in school, now she has started singing. But what is she singing about? That is what is important here. She's singing about the homecoming of the warriors. So for her, her grandson is like a warrior who is coming back after a war. But here, he has not gone to war, he went to study abroad. But this is the custom they follow. They welcome their sons or grandsons who has been away for a long time, and when they come back home, they are welcoming them with a song and a lot of celebration. And this is the part of the celebration where the women gather and they beat a drum and sing a song about the homecoming of the warriors. It's not any other song. So we see another side of her here. She's not the person who's only spinning the wheel, but she's a person who likes entertainment also. That is what we understand here. Okay. The sagging skins of the dilapidated drum. Dilapidated means it's old and worn out. She's beating the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum. That means it's an old drum and it's worn out. The surface on which they beat, that is called the skin of the drum, and that is very loose. It's not firm. Okay. So that is what we see here. Writer writes, we had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstrain. That means she was so energetic and she was so enthusiastic about singing that she was not stopping. And that was the first time I had known her that she did not pray. Now, after the celebration and the singing, she was taken ill. The next morning, we read in the second paragraph on page 6, the next morning she was taken ill. It was a mild fever and the doctor told us that it would go. The doctor was convinced that she would recover, but the grandmother thought that she was going to die. And she told everyone that she does not want to waste any time talking to them because she had already lost some time when she did not pray while she was singing. So that is what is written here. She said that since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life, she had omitted to pray. So she had not prayed for a few minutes when she was doing the singing. So she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. And even though they protested, she ignored their protests. And In the last line of the third paragraph, the writer writes, "A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and we knew that she was dead." So she died very peacefully, lying on her bed. In the last paragraph, it's quite striking that the writer does not talk about the body of the dead person here. He never mentions it as a body or anything. We feel the respect and the affection that the writer has for his grandmother when he's describing her funeral. He writes, "We lifted her off the bed and covered her with a red shroud, and we left her alone." So he's still talking about her as if she's there. These are certain things that you have to notice. Or from here also we understand the feelings that he has for his grandmother. That's why he's not referring to it as we lifted her body or we laid her body down or anything like that. He's only saying we left her alone. The sun was setting and had lit her room. Another important thing I'd like to mention is how he has ended this story. It's a very remarkable way of ending it, where he's mentioning how the sparrows never ate the breadcrumbs given by his mother, because they were used to having it from the grandmother, and they also understood that she was no more. So the sparrows took no notice of the bread, and when we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. So even they maintained the silence. They understood that they should also take part in the mourning. Next morning, the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. And I'm actually very impressed by the way the writer has ended his description of his grandmother. Now that we have finished this lesson, you should write down the answers to the questions given in the text. And it will also be good to do the biographical sketch of Khushwant Singh as an assignment, and also get an idea of all the novels and his writings. Until we meet again, have a nice day.